Great job. Fantastic. Okay, how are we feeling? I'm feeling good. I feel like that was an amazing conversation and that it's kind of like we started out the day by setting the standard, the Bitcoin standard, the hardest money in the world. And then we transition into the new era of having the ETH ETF literally approved within a scope of a week when nobody thought it was possible. All of a sudden, Eric Balchunas on X said that we went from a 25% chance to a 75% chance. Things are heating up, and it feels like this industry has done a 180 in literally no time. This industry moves at lightning speed, so it's important that we navigate through all of these, these speed bumps, these hurdles, these things that we encounter, and that we're used to encountering in this world as we move forward and we try to lay the foundation. So I know there's been talk earlier about how the builders are having to feel around in the dark, that the regulators are not making it easy for them to innovate, to build, and that they're kind of hesitant because of that. So our hope is that we can come together with these industry leaders, decision makers, and have those important discussions on how we should move forward. Now TradFi is coming in, and things are getting exciting. We're getting institutional liquidity. Things are getting easier. As Tim Draper said, I had him on my podcast not too long ago, that we need that Steve Jobsian moment where the click of a button, everything is possible. And I think we're close. We're getting there. And it's really special to see. So this next chat, I really, really love. We had an incredible fireside chat last time, and I'm sure he'll have so much more to share this time, but such an important person in this industry. We're going to switch now gears to DeFi, and we have the king, the founder of DeFi himself here, speaking to us on such an important topic and how we're going to navigate that space moving forward. And it's a fireside chat, The Future of the Internet. We'll have speaker Stani Kulechov, founder of Avara and Aave Labs, moderated by Romain Dillet, senior reporter of TechCrunch. Please give them a big round of applause as we welcome them on stage.
Stani, it's great to have you here in Paris. It's my city, so welcome to Paris. And let's talk about all things Aave, Avara, everything you've been working on. All right?
Thank you so much. It's a very, very beautiful venue as well.
Yeah. Let's get started. So our conversation is going to be on the future of the internet. And you're pretty well known for a lot of things. But I think your breakthrough success was Aave and DeFi. Why do you think Aave has been so successful as a liquidity protocol?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe those who don't know, Aave is a decentralized protocol where you can supply cryptographic assets and use them as a collateral to borrow other types of assets and obviously earn yield. And over the few years, Aave has been growing as DeFi has growing, and DeFi also had ups and downs over the years, but getting more traction even more recently, especially after kind of like a lot of users revisiting the non-custodial approach for swaps, trading, and also lending. And I think in most cases, it's really hard to kind of like pinpoint exact thing that helped to grow Aave. But I do think that a lot of tailwind came from actually having this very inclusive way of actually deploying in different networks. So when we started to build Aave, it was only on Ethereum. So Ethereum was the only place where you have programmable finance, and with layer 2s and new network deployments and with the EVM, we were able to expand Aave into new networks and get additional user base. So I think that kind of like a democratizing aspect helped Aave quite a lot. And obviously, during COVID, when everyone was stuck at home and actually they didn't find anything to do, they were like looking at DeFi and DeFi got a lot of tailwind from that, and so did Aave as well. So I think those are one of the factors that helped quite a lot.
When did you make this decision of growing outside of Ethereum as well, and looking at other blockchains and thinking Aave is going to be this multi-chain liquidity pool?
I think that came around the part when we started to think about governance more, and when Aave is a DAO, so anyone can actually go and contribute to the DAO and create proposals and vote on these governance proposals. And that's also one of the parts why Aave is successful in terms of the different kind of parameters that are set, because it's an open, transparent process. So when we started to think about cross-chain governance and thinking about like how we could actually create and support these new markets in different networks, but still have that decentralized governance in place, that is the kind of like a breakthrough that we realized that actually with our new governance infrastructure that we created supports the cross-chain infrastructure, and that essentially allowed us to scale to these new networks. So we kind of saw EVM as a way to jump board into new networks, and every network that has an EVM most likely also needs a financial layer, and financial layer is essentially swaps and also yield and borrowing. So I think that was the main part.
It sounds like you're drawing a lot of inspirations from financial institutions, from the way DAOs got very inspirational in the early days of Ethereum in particular. How did you come up with this idea of mixing financial products with a DAO?
I think it kind of existed always. So Ethereum itself is somewhat a financial primitive, and also Bitcoin as well. And I think what EVM actually did, it just expanded that surface and design space, what you can actually build on Ethereum as an example. And I would kind of think it in a way that DAOs in general are somewhat like a way to govern a public good. And a public good, what I want to kind of refer to, is something that is so important for people that it shouldn't be, all these important decisions shouldn't be made by one single company or few larger institutions. And what actually the blockchain does really well, it's in its most core is actually the governance piece. So obviously a lot of these projects in DeFi, they follow the same path. They start centralized, and progressively they become more decentralized, and they have a decentralized organization. And the more you decentralize, the more kind of like a clunkier and harder it is actually to innovate. So something we've done very well as a community is that we've been able to continue innovating within the Aave ecosystem, while at the same time decentralizing the DAO and the ownership of the protocol.
And as you bring more people to the DAO, how do you make decisions today to, let's say, release a new update to Aave or launch a new market?
Actually, anyone can make that proposal. So you just go into the governance forum and you can basically create a proposal, whether you are an Aave token holder or not. And then there's a bunch of other people that will come and say that your proposal makes a lot of sense, or they say that it doesn't make sense.
Great or dumb.
Yeah. And and sometimes these DAO kind of participations can become really ugly in the sense that you kind of feel that it's hard to achieve anything there. But to be honest, when you think about it, it's actually really good way to add a lot of diligence and good process into something that is really, really important as financial infrastructure.
Yeah, and Aave as a protocol, it generates a lot of revenue as well.
Yeah.
I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, you shared on Twitter, now X, that the Aave DAO is earning $115 million on an annualized basis.
Yeah.
Who benefits from that revenue?
So all the revenue that the DAO generates, it goes directly to the DAO. So the way it works is that whenever users are supplying cryptographic assets into the protocol itself, the protocol takes a so-called reserve factor, and that is basically that goes to the DAO. So essentially, the DAO decides what to do with these assets, and they fund all kinds of initiatives. So that might be software development. So Aave ecosystem, it has software developers that are outside of the actually Aave Labs team that are contributing to the protocol and improving it ongoing basis. Treasury managers, governance participants, and even some of these active governance delegate platforms are also incentivized. So in some ways, and also risk managers, not to forget. So effectively, the DAO operates in a way where it has revenue, and from that revenue, it has expenses that it needs to cover, because some of these things can be automated necessarily at like risk management. So you need external parties to contribute. And same goes to the software development.
And you personally, you're quite influential. You have quite a few followers on social networks, for instance.
Not that many.
Well, not that many compared to, let's say, Vitalik, for instance, but quite a few still. How much does it influence the governance of Aave?
I think that the best way to test this is basically by creating some sort of really bad proposal, in the sense that, you know, if I go and create a proposal where I will try to take the whole DAO treasury into my EOA address, I'm pretty sure like all the members of the DAO will come and say that it's a really bad idea, and you know, maybe even use more stronger language as well. So it just showcases that essentially what DAOs actually are is that once you build a software, the piece of software like a DeFi protocol, and you decentralize it and give it to the governance, at that point you really lose the power and control. And what that means is that you can still contribute and create ideas and produce some kind of vision or guide the community or be part of the community, but at the same time, you really don't have the same type of ownership anymore. And I think that's the core exciting reason why many of us are in DeFi and also are excited about DAOs. So they can be really clunky, but at the same time, it creates a really democratic way to actually collaborate on something that is really important.
And as you're making it more and more decentralized, have you thought about safeguards that are in place to make sure that it's not going to go sideways and, you know, go to the dumpster basically because a group of adversary people have decided to change completely what Aave is supposed to be?
I think, yeah, that's a hard one, because you could. It's really hard to build direct safeguards. So, for example, that, I mean, anyone can go and acquire some amount of voting power in systems where you have like one-on-one votes, and you see more recently in governance models where you have some sort of like kind of like governance houses where the vote isn't just one-on-one. There is some additional voting power. And that's something the Aave actually, new version of the governance can actually do, that you can add a voting power that doesn't follow the one-on-one model fully. But I would say that the best protective measure for any kind of like a hostile attack will be the people who actually believe in the protocol. They can always fork it. So whenever there is the risk of forking the open source software and creating something new, or dividing from the vision, that's one of the tools. And obviously the other tools is that, and far more important in my opinion, is that having essentially members in the DAO that really care about the original vision and also the progression that it should take towards. And I do think that Aave DAO is a good example, but there's many other DAOs where you still have a lot of people involved that necessarily don't contribute directly into the protocol, but are in the DAO that care about the vision.
Okay, and now you've decided to tackle other topics as well, not just Aave. With Avara, you dipped your toes into decentralized social networks as well. There's Lens, the Lens project, that is sort of backed by Avara. How is Lens doing these days?
Really good. So Lens is a very different kind of a problem to solve compared to, let's say, Aave and DeFi, because what we've been focusing over the past years is to kind of like solve the access of financial capital and financial opportunities, and that's what DeFi is basically doing. What we realized over the years also is that a lot of people actually have even more social capital, and that basically isn't a balance in a bank account or your address, but that's essentially all the identity information that we create and all the connections we make and audiences and content as well. So interestingly, a lot of people have financial capital, but every single person in the planet has social capital, and that social capital has value. And what blockchain does really well is that it creates that ownership credentials to whoever that capital belongs to. And Lens tries to basically be that social infrastructure to enable those primitives, having identity, your connections, and being able to monetize your content. And that's kind of like a important part also of the, if you think about like how blockchains could be used beyond financial use cases, Lens and Decentralized Social is one of great example. And I actually think that something like Decentralized Social can actually scale far more faster, especially when there's right applications and right experiences. And DeFi is also going to scale, but because it's a financial infrastructure and you're dealing with finance, it takes much more longer time and has to be way more mature to take more adoption.
And it seems like traditional social networks have also realized that content creators are very important for their own platforms. And in recent years, some of them have decided to create programs to share the value created with these content creators. On Twitch, for instance, on Reddit more recently, on X more recently as well. What do you think they're getting right and wrong?
Yeah, I think the direction is great. This is one of those things where these bigger social media platforms, they realize that, kind of like, people want more. People want to, we're spending so much time creating that social capital and audiences and creating content online that people are starting to realize that that data actually, or that creation and those audiences belong to them. And bigger social media platforms, they also know that, and they want to also share some amount of those proceeds, but it's still very like a fractional. And when you think about like the whole monetization, like these social media companies, they're one of the biggest companies in the world, and the monetization goes from advertisers or other users to directly to the platform, and the fraction just goes to the users. And what Lens is trying to do, and broader Decentralized Social, is to kind of give more power to the user by enabling this construction of ownership. So when you own your identity and your social graph, you have more power and more choice. So anyone can build on a shared network and benefit from that. So you, as a user, the same way as you can vote today with your liquidity in DeFi by going from one protocol to another, depending which one is you prefer. The same thing should happen in social, that you should be able to go from one social application to another without losing your identity, or you have to recreate your account and gain your follower base.
And there's another piece to the Avara puzzle, which is the family wallet. So you recently acquired a wallet company so that you would have your own wallet. And do you think having your own wallet is important to this part, which is owning your identity and being able to move from one network to another, one protocol to another through Web3?
I mean, essentially, there's great wallets in the space already, so it is not essential from that perspective. But something that was really missing in our space for a very long time was, but actually like a really great, well-designed, high-craft wallet that has a really good experience, and it's something that is easy to use for newcomers as well. So Family is a team that was building this wallet for the past couple of years, and it's still in an early beta, so you can still find the app on App Store, supporting iOS at the moment, so you can actually feel how kind of a different experience Family is. But essentially what we're aiming with family is that the identity piece is important, but also we have to bridge the gap between what we have today as experience in Web3 and how do we interact with Web3 and what actually consumers are used today in more like traditional web. And I think we kind of are in Web3 in a time kind of where internet was before the personal computer. So you have all this technology and connectivity, but you didn't have really good interfaces. So now it's actually really exciting to build not just new wallets or basically new DeFi applications, because you can actually focus on that consumer user and bringing that experience, and that gets more people into the space. And account abstraction is one example that helps quite a lot because you enable gasless transactions, easier recovery. So I think that's the way forward with just better design and experience for the users.
Great. We have a few minutes left. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. But if you have questions as well, I think we're going to have a microphone so you could ask a few questions before the end of the panel. So get ready for that. But before that, I wanted to go back to this topic, bridging the gap between traditional web, Web 2, and Web 3. How do you feel about something like Mastodon, which isn't technically Web 3, but it's probably a bit easier to get started and to come on board compared to, let's say, Lens?
Yeah, I think I think Mastodon is a really good model as well. It's a federated model. It doesn't necessarily guarantee the ownership perspective that Lens, for example, has. So we are very driven by the idea of that. Once you have ownership, then everything can build around that. And in Mastodon, for example, you kind of have to recreate audience, and it's server to server base at the moment. But there's a lot of improvements in federated models. So I do think they will exist, and you can make really interesting applications there. But what we are focusing quite a lot in with Lens actually is that, like, how do we enable the ownership component? Because once you have that, you can start actually building interesting applications, and you have portability. And down the line, you can add even more data control for the users, and then also add privacy layers as well. And then we're reaching to a kind of a tipping point where using something like Lens is actually quite easy. And actually it is today. So if one of the apps on Lens called Orb, if you download today, it's a mobile app. You're using Lens on every single kind of like a transaction. It's gasless. You don't sign anything. You sign up with an email. And all this blockchain type of activity and interactions are happening in the background without the user actually needing to know about it. And I think that's the future, what I'm thinking of crossing the gap with what we're building today and where we have to be with consumers.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, so do we have questions from the audience? Maybe here at the front, do we have a microphone? Should I just hand mine? Let's do it.
Hey, thank you for the panel. It's very, very interesting. My question was about Lens and like the idea that content creators will own their own identities and audience itself. I totally get the benefits for them, but what is the benefit for ordinary users to move to something like Web3, very scary, strange, not really clear how to use it, and from like those like very familiar for them, like Twitter or Facebook? So what are the benefits for them? Because you mentioned kind of like control and security, but do they really care about this? I mean, Facebook's selling data all the time. No one cares. So how to drive this audience to new Web3 platforms? Because otherwise, no one like actually get benefits from it.
No, it's a great question, and I think it's something that we're also thinking on an ongoing basis and trying to like refresh our thinking. And the point that we always come back is that essentially users, especially like the wider public, and they don't necessarily care about the blockchain aspect or the ownership aspect until it becomes a useful thing. So for example, if there's 2-3 applications on the same network and You don't have to recreate your identity. That's really valuable. But that also requires distribution. And I think with decentralized social and with Lens, we're not there yet. And I think we're kind of like in the early days of DeFi. But what I do think is that substantially today there's a big problem in the sense of monetization. So once you have that audience, all the monetization decisions are always made by the platform, and there's little actually ability for the users to decide upon how much they can monetize or what are these monetization tools. So I personally think that monetization is going to be really important key aspect. And if you own your audience and you can actually monetize by sharing relevant content to them with NFTs as well, and other types of monetization tools, and even tipping, which is kind of something that is growing quite a lot, that is going to be really helpful. But most of this kind of like complexity of a blockchain should be anyways abstracted away. So kind of we have to use the crypto rails to empower the users. And at the same time, what you mentioned about the kind of familiarity, and I do think that schemomorphic approach where users are using something that is familiar, but has a kind of like Web3 backend that is easy to use, will be one way to reach users. But I personally think that the way to get more users is actually creating new social spaces and new experiences that are enabled with these Web3 primitives, Web3 social primitives. And that kind of like creates the transition. So for example, just building a decentralized Twitter won't really do anything. Maybe if you have a better algorithm, that might help to some extent. But I do think it's actually building something completely new and being possible, or getting the benefit out of it with the crypto rails. And that's the monetization aspect. I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, very interesting. We have time for one more question. Let's go ahead.
Hi, Stani. Thank you so much for your presentation. I guess my question is, on as far as like ranking the feature set for Web3 social, where do you place kind of like building your own algorithm, or kind of rolling your own algorithm, being able to choose the type of content that you see?
At the current stage, we want to build Lens in a very open way, and that means that as the protocol is available, the data and the ability to build algorithm is there available for developers. We from our team, we want to build a few of these algorithms and lead by example. But I think eventually the most interesting algorithms will come from the community. And I think it's a open design space. And it's a very unique position and perspective at the moment, because you can't really go and build an algorithm to an existing social media platform and just plug it in. And Lens is something that gives that opportunity by default. And I think the more we can actually open and democratize the ability to compute on the social networking data, the more we see these types of algorithms being born. There's already a couple of teams building something really interesting. And I think with open source large language models, we will see even more interesting use cases as well, and combined with the on-chain data. Especially, in some extent, blockchains are full of exciting information that could actually be used in a various ways.
Stani, thank you so much. It's been a very thoughtful discussion. I think we could have talked for hours and hours, but that's all the time we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I'll just step to the side.